Tom Cameron's wages.
Ed Huntley, David Brink, John Chen, Tom Brokaw.
Sell-off. The Dow drops almost 200 points, falling to new lows for the year. Wall Street suddenly worried about an economic slowdown. Our special series on taxes. As Americans line up to pay, millions get an unpleasant surprise. A tax that was meant for the rich is snagging the middle class. Deadly fire. A Paris hotel goes up in flames, killing at least 20, half of them children. And Nightly Journal, the aircraft carrier USS America, about to embark on one last mission, why the men who served aboard her are more than a little nostalgic.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, Campbell Brown.
Good evening. It has been a week full of bad news about the economy, dominated by concerns about oil prices and inflation. Well, today, all that anxiety was reflected on Wall Street in a big way. The Dow had its worst day in more than 2 years, with stocks tumbling 191 points. The Nasdaq fell more than 38 points. For the week, the Dow was down almost 374 points. The Nasdaq fell 91 points for the week. Is this a short-term blip, or are there serious economic worries ahead? For that, we turn to NBC's chief financial correspondent, Ann Thompson, at the NASDAQ for us tonight. Ann?
Good evening, Campbell. One market strategist described as investors as being in a funk. Another said what happened this week was essentially a huge mood swing, as investors went from believing the economy was growing at a healthy clip to fearing it is slowing down.
It was an ugly end to an ugly week. For 3 consecutive days, the Dow fell more than 100 points. Today's 191-point plunge, the biggest one-day decline since March 2003. And the Nasdaq hit a low not seen since October.
Mood of investors has become pretty dismal. We went from almost frothy-like happy conditions early March when we were kind of bordering at Dow 11,000. And right now you're just finding investors bleeding everywhere and feeling particularly miserable.
Driving the pessimism, a host of discouraging economic news. Consumer sentiment, as tracked by the University of Michigan, today reported at its lowest level in almost a year and a half. Output from the nation's industries up in March, but due mainly to utilities generating more energy to ward off the cold, while production at factories, particularly auto plants, fell slightly. And then there's the issue of corporate earnings. Even good news didn't help. General Electric, owner of this network, reported double-digit profit growth, and Citigroup beat Wall Street's expectations. But it was IBM, Big Blue, that turned the markets blue, reporting results from a dismal first quarter plagued by declining sales abroad and increasing pension costs.
IBM's shortfall clearly took the technology group down. It was one of the most beaten-up stock groups of the day. And unfortunately, there are questions out there relative to the month of March and the durability of tech-related spending.
Yet some actually see a silver lining here. They say that slower economic growth means less inflation pressure and therefore less need to raise interest rates. But clearly this week, Wall Street chose to see the glass half empty rather than half full. Campbell?
NBC's Ann Thompson tonight. And in the midst of all this, it is, of course, tax day. As usual, millions of Americans are waiting until the last possible minute to send in those forms and those checks. For some, this year's tax payment, though, was a lot higher than expected. The reason is something called the alternative minimum tax. It is supposed to be aimed at the rich. But because of a quirk in the law, more and more middle-class families are taking a big hit. Joining me now from Washington, NBC's Chip Reed. Chip?
Well, good evening, Campbell. You can see here at this post office in Washington, they've got the drop-off tax form bins already, preparing for that last-minute frenzy. And that alternative minimum tax has a huge number of taxpayers grumbling this year. As you said, it was intended to target the rich, but now it is hitting a lot of the middle class, and it's only going to get worse.
Jay and Kristen Searcy at 1142.62 today. In the bond market, the 10-year note closed up 18 seconds to 98 and 1/32, putting the yield at 4.25%.
The markets may be worried about the economic outlook, but the Bush administration is reassuring the world that the U.S. expansion is on track. Treasury Secretary John Snow will deliver that message tonight at a meeting of finance ministers from other G7 nations. Washington Bureau Chief Darren Gersh sat down with Snow and began.
And as they do each year, the president and vice president released some details of their tax filings today. The president paid $207,000 in federal tax on an income of $672,000. The Cheneys paid $393,000 in federal tax on an income of $1.3 million. A horrifying scene in Paris early this morning. As fire consumed a hotel, those trapped inside took desperate measures. At least 20 were killed, half of them children, making this fire the deadliest in Paris in more than 20 years. NBC's Martin Savage is at the site.
As flames engulf the roof of the Paris Opera Hotel.
Back here in the U.S., a case that is pushing the legal envelope in the war on terror. A Muslim religious scholar is on trial in Virginia this week, not for committing acts of terror, but for allegedly encouraging others to kill American troops in Afghanistan. It's the first time since 9/11 a religious figure has been prosecuted on terror charges for his words. Before the start of the trial, the controversial religious leader sat down for an exclusive interview with NBC's senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers.
This is Ali Al-Tamimi, an American biologist and Islamic spiritual leader.
Social Security, the Bush administration opens the door to changing its plans for private accounts. And later, sainthood for Pope John Paul II, a popular groundswell to speed up the process.
A look at our other stocks in the news tonight. Excuse me. For the third consecutive day, Pfizer topped the active list, trading 48.3 million shares today, moving up 26 cents. Then General Electric on those higher earnings, gaining 25 cents. Eli Lilly did well, up $2.91, traded as high as $59.80. After the close yesterday, a federal judge ruled the company's patent on its Zyprexa drug is valid. Citigroup on higher earnings, up 35 cents. Then Lucent Technologies lost 11 cents. That was fifth in big board volume. ExxonMobil on the lower oil prices, down $2.56. IBM, the big casualty in the Dow, off $6.94. That drop in big blue stock was 51 points of the Dow overall drop of 191. Nortel Networks dropped a nickel, and then Genentech, the star of the day, up $10.72, traded as high as 71. The company and Roche say that their Avastin drug, along with chemotherapy, are effective in treating some types of breast cancer. Deutsche Bank Securities upgraded Genentech from hold to buy with a $76 a share target. Standard & Poor's rates it a strong buy. Hewlett-Packard down 91 cents. That was 10th in volume. Then General Motors off $1.06. Prudential, however, did upgrade it from neutral to overweight. First quarter results for GM due out next Tuesday. A big loss is expected. Also today, J.P. Morgan had some negative comments about GM. Mattel Incorporated off $1.56. Flat first quarter earnings, 2 cents, same as last year and a penny below the street estimate. And as we suggested earlier, Barbie doll sales are on the wane. Cash American International, which runs a string of pawn shops, off $5.89. The company cut its first quarter earnings estimate down to 39 cents from its previous guidance of 45 to 47 cents. And the company also withdrew its 2005 earnings guidance. Avery Dennison, which is in the adhesives business, down $6.87. The company warned first quarter earnings will be about 10 cents below its previous guidance, which ranged all the way from 71 to 78 cents a share. And Saks Incorporated down $1.37. The company missed filing its 2005 annual report, and it won't meet the April 29th extended deadline due to internal investigations of its vendor payments. The company also postponed its annual meeting. A new issue came to market today. Earl M. Jorgensen Company, which is a distributor of metal products, 17.6 million shares offered at 10, opened at 9. The high of the day was $9.65. Not a great day to come to market, that's for sure. Microsoft topped the NASDAQ active list, down 38 cents, followed by Apple Computer off $1.91 on the company's cautious third quarter outlook. Google down nearly $6.50 today. Intel fell 37 cents. Cisco, 61-cent drop there, fifth in dollar volume. Applied Materials was down 76 cents. Yahoo getting hit for $1 on the downside. Symantec off $1.18. Dell Incorporated fell 62 cents, and Research in Motion down $1.63. 10th in volume. Taltz Corporation bucked the overall trend with a gain of $5.63. The company says its fourth quarter earnings should be around 30 to 31 cents. That's well above the Wall Street estimate of 24 cents. This company provides verification services for income and employment, and business apparently is booming for the company. Petco Animal Supplies down $4.78. The company has delayed its 2005 10K annual report due to accounting errors. And those are the stocks in the news tonight. Susie?
Thank you, Paul. Well, the forms are filed.
Giant signaled its intention to jettison the credit card business. There's no word yet on whether Discover will be spun off directly to shareholders or sold outright. Morgan Stanley shares today were down 84 cents, closing at $51.
Here's a look now.
Stock market acting so poorly. It's terrible.
We've had a mood swing, and it's an incredible one. Investors have been betting the scenario that interest rates were going to be moving higher, inflation was going to be moving higher, and the economy was going to continue to be robust in the United States and globally as well. Ironically, during the course of the week, weak retail sales numbers, issuance of statements from IBM about slowing in the month of March, and other anecdotal evidence points to a slower soft patch ahead. So that means selling of those commodity stocks, selling of the oil stocks, and buying those that are less
soon.
I do.
Merck & Company, which you've been with a long time at higher prices, but the last time you were with us, you said buy more, and it worked out well. It's up 13% from that point. And Pfizer, mainly due to today, is down about 8.6%. You still with those two? Do you personally own them?
I don't own them, but I still stick with those stocks,
okay.
Yes.
Let's have a look at some of the other recommendations you made back in October. Procter & Gamble is up 2.1% from where it was then, and the hero was Johnson & Johnson, up 25.4%. Are you still with those?
I am. I wish I could have all of Johnson & Johnson.
And you own both of those?
I do.
Okay. And there was one other, and that was the NASDAQ Qs, which mainly due to today are down a bit, just 2.8%, but you're going to stay with it or buy more here?
Oh, yeah. That's a tech-laden index. I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Let's have some new buy recommendations if you have some.
Tech loses 38. To learn more about the stories in tonight's broadcast, go to NBR.com. And that's Nightly Business Report for Friday, April 15th. I'm Susie Garib. Have a great weekend, everyone, and the same to you, Paul.
And you as well, Susie. I'm Paul Kangas, wishing all of you the best of goodbyes.
Nightly Business Report is made possible by Franklin Templeton Investment.
Lead Journal, brought to you by Walmart. Always low prices. Always.
In 1962, President John F. Kennedy gave a brand new state-of-the-art aircraft carrier the name America. Just the third time in the Navy's history that a ship was honored with the name. The America and her crew went on to fight in Vietnam and many other hot spots until the ship was decommissioned in 1996. Sometime next week, the America will be towed out to sea and sunk by other ships. The Navy says the sinking will help them design future carriers. The men of the Americas say their ship deserves a better fate. Here with our Nightly Journal, NBC's Bob Faw.
Even today, mothballed in Philadelphia, she is a colossus.
60,000 tons of it down to Davy Jones' locker. Doesn't exactly have environmentalists jumping for joy either.
The Navy, which won't DC News, Philadelphia.
That's Nightly News for this Friday night. I'm Campbell Brown. I'll see you tomorrow morning on Today. Have a good night, everybody.
Next, Brad.
Chad Huntley, David Benson, John Chen, Tom Brokaw.
Smoke signal. Black smoke from the Sistine Chapel. The papal conclave finishes day one with no new pope. After the storm, an anxious day on Wall Street after the market's worst week in 2 years. The president's perspective on the markets, the effect on his Social Security program, and gas prices. Tonight, our exclusive interview. And the terrorist next door, 10 years after the bombing here in Oklahoma City, why federal officials say the homegrown terrorist threat may be growing more dangerous.
This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, reporting tonight from Oklahoma City.
And good evening from the Oklahoma City Memorial. In fact, just about the very spot where Timothy McVeigh's Ryder truck first rolled to a stop on April 19th, 1995. That day changed the nation, and many Americans find it hard to believe that tomorrow will mark 10 years since that day. A bit later on in this broadcast, a look back and a look at the state of so-called homegrown terrorism in the United States. But we begin